At 02:10 hours local time, the first explosions rolled across the industrial zone of Salavat. There was no siren. There was no warning. In a city of 155,000 people deep in the Republic of Bashkortostan, residents woke to a sound they had only ever heard on the news, from Ryazan, from Saratov, from Moscow, never from their own windows. Then the smoke came up over the plant, black, thick, and visible from the far side of town. What was burning was Gazprom Neftekhim Salavat, one of the largest oil refining and petrochemical complexes in Russia. 10 million metric tons of crude a year on paper, 2.7% of everything the country refines. Gasoline, diesel, jet fuel, lubricants, ammonia, methanol, and the last major gasoline producer in Russia that had not yet been struck in 2026. The drones that reached it had flown 930 miles. But what made this strike different was not the distance. It was what the distance had been doing. Salavat was never protected by missile batteries. It was protected by the map, by the comfortable arithmetic that nothing cheap could fly that far and still find one specific unit inside one specific plant. That night, the arithmetic failed. To call Salavat a refinery is to undersell it. It is 3 plants standing shoulder to shoulder: an oil refinery, a gas chemical plant, and the monomer complex. Crude goes in at one end. Out the other come gasoline, diesel, jet fuel, bitumen, lubricants, polyethylene, ammonia, methanol. In 2024, it processed 7.2 million metric tons of crude oil. That yielded roughly 1.5 million tons of gasoline and 2.5 million tons of diesel, Russia's 10th largest refinery and one of its most versatile. But the number that matters is not on any tank, it is under the ground. Salavat was built in 1948 and built for one reason: to sit on top of the Volga-Urals oil field. The city came second, the plant came first. A pipeline network was laid to tie it to the drilling areas around it, and then a longer one to tie it to Ufa and Ishimbe, thus the other refineries of Bashkortostan, and further still, west to the fields of Tatarstan. Salavat is not a factory, it is a junction, which is why on the map it looked untouchable. Not because of what stood around it, because of what stood between it and Ukraine. 930 miles of Russia. Moscow had reason to feel confident. In September 2025, Ukrainian drones had already reached this plant, twice. They struck the ELOU-AVT-4 unit, the heart of the refinery. And afterward, the head of Bashkortostan, Radi Kabirov, announced that the enterprise was continuing to operate as usual. The Kremlin drew a lesson from that. It drew the wrong one. It decided that distance still worked. Start with the money, because Russia's problem starts there. A Firepoint FP-1 strike drone reportedly costs around $55,000. The larger AN-196 Lyutyy runs closer to $200,000. A modern Interceptor round, Tor, Pantsir, certainly an S-400, costs many times more, which produces a sentence no defense ministry wants written down. Interception is a losing trade even when it works, especially when it works. Russia understood this. It tried to buy its way out. Moscow is ringed by roughly 100 Pantsir S-1 systems and about 24 S-400 batteries, more than 100 air defense positions around one city. When that proved insufficient, engineers began bolting Pantsir launchers onto the roofs of apartment blocks and office towers. That is the most heavily defended airspace in the Russian Federation. On the morning of June 18, 2026, Ukrainian drones flew into it and set the Moscow oil refinery on fire, 15 kilometers from the Kremlin. And in the verified footage that followed, one detail stands above the rest. A Russian surface-to-air missile missed its drone, flew on, and hit a fuel storage tank. The explosion was fired by the defenders. On paper, Russia had built one of the densest air defense networks on Earth. But the battlefield does not run on advertised numbers. Now hold that picture next to Salavat. Ukraine's Deputy Defense Minister, Serhiy Bezkresnov, callsign Flash, has made the point bluntly. Russia cannot build air defense fast enough to cover its own territory. He has published photographs of what fills the gap. Air-to-air missiles, R-77-1s, welded onto the backs of trucks. CNN described the result as a more threadbare tapestry, a fabric stretched over too much country. Ukrainian planners do not aim at the fabric, they aim at the holes. They did not need to defeat Russia's air defense. They only needed to be somewhere it wasn't. The aircraft that made this possible is almost embarrassingly plain. The An-196 Lyutyy is a propeller-driven, one-way attack drone with a fiberglass airframe. Cheap, simple, hard to see. Its cruising speed is under 120 miles an hour, slower than a light aircraft from the 1940s. The commander of Ukraine's long-range drone unit, callsign Vector, says the type routinely flies 1,500 to 1,700 kilometers, carrying 50 to 70 kilograms. 1,500 kilometers, 930 miles, exactly the distance Ukraine's Special Operations Forces say their drones covered to reach Salavat. And it does not ask a satellite for permission. Ukraine's long-range drones increasingly navigate by inertial guidance, ground triangulation, and vision. Three systems that cannot be jammed because none of them are listening for anything. Now the other side of the board. Pantsir S-1, the point defense shield, missiles and autocannon on one vehicle built for low, slow targets. The detail worth holding on to, the ones pulled back to guard Moscow arrived wearing anti-drone cages over the cab, the improvised armor of front-line crews, and at least one was photographed with an incomplete missile load, 2 rounds where 6 should sit. Tor M2, short range, optimized for exactly the profile a Lyutyy flies. Which is the problem? It is the right system for Salavat. It is stationed near Moscow. 9K-333 Verba, the shoulder-fired missile carried by Russia's mobile fire groups, a genuinely advanced seeker tracking in ultraviolet, near-infrared, and mid-infrared at once, far harder to fool with flares than anything before it. Range over 3 miles, a 3-pound warhead. On July 8, 2026, a Verba crew from Russia's own reserve force locked onto a slow-moving aerial target and fired. It was a K-52, $16 million, 1 crewman dead, their own helicopter hunting their own drones. And the newest layer? Interceptor drones. Russia has begun systematically fielding purpose-built anti-air UAVs, and field reports name the targets by type: the FP-1, the Lyutyy series, the E-300. They launched several against a single drone, some chasing from behind, some flown head-on into it. The Ukrainians stopped treating air defense as a wall and started treating it as a data set. They didn't fly around the air defense, they flew through the arithmetic of it. The first 300 kilometers are the only ones that still work the way the manual says. Belgorod, Bryansk, Kursk. This is where Russia's air defense is real. Dense, layered, alert, and pointed the right way. Everything after it is improvisation. And by the end of that night, the Russian Ministry of Defense would claim its air defenses destroyed nearly 150 drones across 16 regions and 2 seas. Some of that claim is real. The border belt earns its numbers, but look at what they cost. A Russian crew needs roughly 8 seconds to move from detection to firing. See the return, classify it, hand off the track, slew the launcher, give the order. 8 seconds is fast. At 120 miles an hour, the drone covers about 1,400 feet in those 8 seconds. 1,400 feet is nothing. The missile has range to spare. The radar is working. The crew is competent. Here, 8 seconds is enough. They will not get 8 seconds again for another 900 miles. Voronezh, Saratov, Ryazan, Lipetsk, Tula. Past the border belt, the tapestry thins, and the Ukrainians already knew exactly where, because the route was not a line drawn between 2 points. It was a line drawn between 2 maps. Vector has described how it works. One map plots where the Pantsir and Tor systems actually sit. A second plots where electronic warfare is degrading navigation. The route is programmed through the space between them, and ahead of the armed drones go the decoys, unarmed, identical on radar, carrying nothing but the ability to be shot at. The decoys are the point. They do not need to survive. They need to be answered. Imagine you are the duty officer in Saratov at 2 in the morning, 12 tracks on your screen, all slow, all low, all the same size. 4 of them are real. You have 6 missiles ready and a reload cycle measured in minutes. Which four do you choose? Choose wrong and a refinery burns. Choose slowly and it burns anyway. Tell me what you would have done. I want to read it in the comments. According to Vector, repeated strikes have gradually worn down entire layered sectors, opening operational corridors that did not exist a year ago. Russia's air defense is not being defeated. It is being audited. Every raid returns a better map. And then the Interceptor drones come up to meet them. Fly low. And the Interceptors and the mobile fire groups own you. Fly higher to escape them, and you hand yourself to every ground sensor and radar in the corridor. There is no safe altitude, only the altitude that is less bad tonight. So Ukraine went after the men on the ground instead. On May 12, 2026, for the first time on record, a Ukrainian long-range drone fired back. An FP-1 launched unguided rockets, almost certainly Soviet-era S-5s, 57mm, 10 pounds each, effective out to roughly 2 miles, at a Russian mobile fire group, a one-way attack drone, mid-mission conducting suppression. It did not need to kill anyone, it only needed to make men lie down. A fire team worrying about its own survival is not shooting at anything else. And there is one more thing, the quietest of them all. According to the resistance movement Atesh, Russian command in southern Ukraine has begun restricting fuel deliveries to its own mobile fire groups and air defense units. They are short of gasoline. Hold that thought. Some drones were shot down that night, but that was a loss already calculated. By the final approach, satellite navigation is worthless. It does not matter, because the Belaya River does not jam. It runs 1,430 kilometers out of the southern Urals, and it does one thing that matters to a drone flying on vision alone. It separates the mountains in the east from the uplands in the west. A single, unbroken line of contrast, dark against light, running exactly where you need to go. 26 kilometers short of the plant, the terrain hands over the last landmark. They are called the Shikhans, Torah Tau, 402 meters, Kushtau, 357, Urak Tau, 336. Limestone hills standing alone on the plain beside the river. Fossil reefs, 290 million years old, pushed up out of an ancient sea. There is nothing else in Bashkortostan that looks like them. No electronic warfare system ever built can turn off a mountain. At 120 miles an hour, 26 kilometers is roughly 8 minutes. 8 minutes for a Russian crew that does not exist, at a position that was never built, to react to an attack that Moscow's own maps said could not reach this far. Salavat is a strip, 5.5 kilometers along the river, 2.5 wide. That is where the people live. The industrial territory sprawls across most of the rest of the 111 square kilometers. The plant is bigger than the city. The target separated itself. They came for AVT-6. Every refinery has a front door, and this is it. The primary crude distillation unit is where raw oil arrives first, heated, separated, sorted into fractions before anything else in the plant can touch it. Everything downstream waits on it. Polymers, ammonia, lubricants, the whole monomer complex. All of it stands in a queue that begins here. Damage a cracking unit and you lose a product line. Damage the front door and the queue stops. In September 2025, Ukrainian drones took out ELOU-AVT-4, the heart. This time they went for the other door. According to Ukraine's Special Operations Forces, the drones reached their targets and struck the AVT-6 unit along with other production facilities. The physics after that needs no drama. Steel skin opens. Hydrocarbon vapor finds air. Vapor ignites before liquid does. The flash arrives first, then the pressure, then the fire settles into whatever it can reach. The OSINT Project Astra, reading the same eyewitness video, believes a second site may also have been hit that morning, a Rosneft Opt fuel depot. And July in southern Bashkortostan is not a neutral month. This is Sukhove country, the dry, scorching wind that comes across the steppe in late spring and summer on days that reach 97 degrees. Dry wind moving sideways across a burning petrochemical complex. Then came the official version. The head of Bashkortostan reported that a mass drone attack on the Salavat industrial zone had been repelled. There were several spots where smoke was rising. These were caused by debris from downed drones. No one was hurt. Regional authorities added that the plant was operating as normal. Ukraine's general staff said something narrower and more damning for it. The strike on the facility was confirmed, followed by a fire on the premises, and the extent of the damage was being assessed. One side gave a complete answer immediately. The other said it did not know yet. On paper, the attack was repelled. The smoke was only debris. It is always only debris, one day. Before the drones reached Salavat, Bloomberg published a number. Russian refineries were processing 3.91 million barrels of crude a day, the lowest level since March 2005, more than 1.4 million barrels below the same period a year earlier. That number was printed on July 13th. Salavat burned on July 14th, which tells you what this strike actually was. Not an opening, a closing. Roughly 50 attacks in 100 days, hitting at least 24 of Russia's 34 large refineries. The International Energy Agency reports the campaign has affected more than half of Russia's refining capacity since the start of May. How much is permanently gone is contested. Estimates run from 20 to over 40%. But you can see it from the ground. The fuel crisis has reached at least 78 of Russia's 83 regions. Some ration gasoline by license plate number. Novosibirsk asked companies to return to remote work to save fuel. Krasnodar assigned school teachers to shifts at filling stations to manage the queues. And last month, Russians typed how to make gasoline into Yandex more than 17,000 times, the most since the invasion began. Now remember the mobile fire groups, the ones being restricted on fuel. Russia's refineries burn because its air defense is thin. Its air defense is thin because its refineries burn. That is the difference between destruction and paralysis. Destruction takes a plant off the map. Paralysis makes the system that guards the plant compete with the plant for the same gasoline. Crimea was the old argument that Ukraine could reach the places Russia stole. Bashkortostan is the new one, that there is no longer a Russian rear at all. As Zelensky put it after Omsk, deep strikes are no longer a sensation. So what actually protects an oil refinery? Missiles, distance, or the fuel needed to run the air defense that guards it? Tell me in the comments. If you believe Ukraine deserves to live in peace and freedom, hit like, subscribe, and share. Thank you for watching. See you in the next video.